Okay, I'm going to call to order the Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee meeting. We're at 5:32 p.m. Mrs. Show, could I have a roll call, please?
Levy,
Present.
Ruff, Schneider.
Present.
All members are present except Ms. Ruff.
A motion for the approval of the agenda?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved in second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. It passes unanimously. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes for March 15th, 2022?
So moved.
Second. It's been moved and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Information or discussion items, 2A, Coordinated Comprehensive Early Intervening Services Update.
Thank you for running that. Good evening. Melissa Beavers, Executive Director of Pupil Services. I have with me Eric Weir, Carrie Osker, and Erica Oskins, who will also be helping me with the presentation tonight. We're back here before the committee just to do an update on the Comprehensive Coordinated Early Intervening Services, which we discussed earlier in the year. We're trying to think what month we did it, but it might have been August, maybe July. And just give the board, or the committee, I'm sorry, some updates. I just first wanted to update you or give a reminder of what these funds, how we're identified and what the funds are used for. So if you could go to the next slide, I'll just do a quick update for those of you who are not aware. So there's an annual cycle for identification. The state uses specific school data to look at individual schools and identify them in areas where they're having difficulty meeting all student needs. Like I said, this is an annual cycle for identification, and the school district of Beloit is identified as being racially disproportionate in disciplining students with disabilities. So the district response as a result of that is engaging in continuous improvement processes. The DPI does not mandate how we have to address the disproportionality, but they do expect us to engage in this continuous improvement process, which includes really looking at data, completing a root cause analysis, and then identifying an action plan with strategies that go along with that. And this will hopefully change existing practices that we have and help support our students better. The last step in that is setting aside 15% of our flow-through funds once the plan is approved by DPI. 15% of our flow-through funds have to be set aside in order to address the disproportionality in which we've been identified. I'm going to pass it on to Eric, and he's going to discuss the district-wide efforts up to this point.
All right.
Sorry, I'm short.
Nope, you're good. So when we were here last time, we had talked about our intent behind using the funds initially to add a couple positions. And so we've been fortunate enough to hire a coordinator of specialized behavioral supports, which is Carrie Osker, who will be speaking to you guys in a bit. And we've also been fortunate to hire on an intermediate behavior coach, which is Erica Oskins, who will also be speaking a little bit about her work. So with the addition of those two positions, we've really been able to do a lot of targeted work around pulling our district-wide data, analyzing our data, streamlining practices across our buildings, and just starting the conversation about kind of changing mindsets and rethinking how we support students with their social, emotional, and behavioral needs. The last thing that we have on there is we really worked this year to redefine what our positive behavioral interventions and supports look like within our buildings. So we have addenda for staff to take on coach and support roles within those buildings. And those individuals help formulate kind of a core team that really is working to streamline all of those social, emotional, and behavioral supports across our buildings. So then to speak about some of the specific school spotlights, we have Carrie.
Hey, good evening. My name is Carrie Oscar, and super grateful to be in the infancy of the position, but coordinator of specialized behavior supports. And so, like Eric and Missy said, when we started this year out, as opposed to deciding top down how we thought the schools would best serve their students, we went to the schools and worked with admin teams. That's been a lot of my job this year, to work with administrative teams to essentially do a root cause analysis of their behavior referral. So the data is shared. I don't think we necessarily shared that, but the schools that I'm hyper focused on, the intermediates as well as Merrell Elementary. It's obviously still working with the high school and providing support to the other schools, but looking at those schools because they've been specifically identified. And so spent a lot of the first and second semester, even into the third, really digging into the data to do a root cause analysis and work with those administrative teams to assess and address perhaps areas of growth for that school. And so just because of a packed agenda, we're gonna start by highlighting Merrell tonight, and we'll continue to share and board updates other schools. So I thought it best to let the babies speak for themselves, if you will. And so you see pictures on the screen right now of our Young Kings group at Merrell Elementary. So when I met with Ms. Herford or Principal Herford's team to look at disaggregating their behavioral data and really trying to do a root cause analysis of why do they think not necessarily that their referrals are so high, but the number one response for their referrals is a suspension as opposed to some other means when we looking at their data. And so I appreciate the seriousness in which her team took it, but they came up with two root cause analysis, two reasons that they feel like their team at Merrell has identified. And so the first being they really felt like there was a lack of opportunities for Black males to have a self-identity at the elementary level. In terms of their everyday happenings, so curriculum, but also social experiences. And they also felt, which I think many administrative teams are feeling like this, but they felt like there was a lack of male role models within the school that students were able to interact with every single day. So they came up with, and they have branded their group as Young Kings. And obviously a goal for the team was to look at their behavior referrals. So they worked together to identify, or Ms. Herford did along with her team, to identify Mr. Marquise Terrell, as well as Mr. Carl Newton Jr. And those are the two males who lead Young Kings. And let me just talk you through some of the goals or specifics of their actual program. One of the things that we found is Merrell offers various opportunities outside of the school day, but there's very few opportunities within the school day for instance, like a student who identifies as a Black male to have an opportunity that is solely focused on the Black experience from a male perspective or even just collectively. And so they did a few things. They thought outside the box, which you'll see in the next group as well, but they took time during the students' already prescribed social emotional learning time that they felt like there wasn't an opportunity for the males. Like I said, their number one goal was self-identity, and second being an experience with a role model. Two, they pull students once a week, depending on if you're a first or second grader. That's the primary age group that these kids are currently being pulled from, in order to have a specific curriculum. And I can list off some of the things in terms of working on advocacy skills, perspective taking, how to advocate for help, social awareness, as well as displaying positive behavior. So they receive specific targeted instruction to help them continue to be successful and for the school system to see the greatness that inherently they come to school with every day that maybe our typical systems, or we know based on what we're seeing, is not bringing out in them. And so they are pulled once a week during the cell time to get a really targeted, proactive supports, and then they also have an opportunity 2 days a week to participate in an after-school program. So what that looks like is they're offered snack because it's 3 o'clock and they're hungry. They start their afternoon with a circle. They have a pledge. I am somebody is a pledge that Ms. Herford starts her day off at Merrell every single day. That's a pledge that the gentlemen recite as well. They do some body wellness as well as another prescribed lesson. And some of the topics were, what does it mean to be a gentleman, getting to know me, becoming successful, why am I so angry, taking responsibility for my actions. And these are all lessons that were designed, not that we purchased, designed along with using resources from some resources that Ms. Herford has purchased. And so, another interesting component, if you'll notice, they're looking real fancy on the picture to the right. One of the incentives that Ms. Herford's team has worked on, if you're familiar with the Ron Clark Academy, she's a big fan, but they put a lot of incentive into sort of codes of culture or ways in which you engage. And so one of the things that she's tried to institute is you'll notice on the right-hand side, not every gentleman is wearing either a bow tie. Every single student has a button-up tie a button-up shirt as a level playing field. And then you'll notice some have either a suit coat or a jacket. Those clothing materials are earned based on displays of character in the rest of the general education day. They also are in full uniform on Wednesday on purpose so that others within the school recognize the greatness and the leadership that they're showing. So I think the only component that I haven't mentioned that's on the picture, and obviously the picture is another student working with another student in a reading group there with the fancy bow tie. And the picture on the bleachers is they have also tried to moving those skills out into the community as that was another root cause, role models and awareness for the students also to self-identify within in their own setting, but also the community. So the two leaders, Mr. Terrell and Mr. Newton, they made it out to a Beloit College basketball game. So it's important for them to do outings as well that they're trying to plan. So that is Young Kings, and just some baseline data, as that's always important too. Not that just we're putting money towards causes, but is it actually increasing? So they are on week 12 of the program. And when I ran office referrals of the students that continuously attend, so they invited 21 to start, they have been able to have 80% more consistent attendance rate with 9 students. And of those 9 students, in the 12 weeks, only 2 of them have had 1 office discipline referral, not resulting in a suspension. Compared to, obviously they're specific to students, so I won't go into that, but great progress. In terms of that, she really approached the program as a pilot to see could we sustain this all year, and her team is interested in looking to continue next year. So this is Young Kings. I would encourage, if you have an opportunity, to visit Merrell on a Wednesday. They're looking real sharp, but they're also doing really great things. Ms. Herford also reported, I said, can you give me some anecdotal notes? What are your staff saying? I've been on there I stopped 2 times, on a Tuesday and a Thursday and a Wednesday as well, but that's all my perception. So I asked, in what ways do you feel like this is mainstreaming into the classroom? Because a lot of times what we find is when those adults exit the situation, then sometimes the behavior changes. But they said they feel like they've seen a grave increase in students' ownership of situations, but also advocacy for themselves in terms of their identity and what they need. So that is Young Kings. The second, when they got rolling with Young Kings, then every teacher wanted another opportunity at Merrell. So again, it's just the Merrell spotlight. We'll share others in the future, but they have also instituted this year, and we're just like in the first month, because they spent, like I said, 12 weeks to get Young Kings rolling. We're starting week 3 of Merrell Drumline Academy. Steve Jordan is the school counselor over there. A native drummer is what I hear is kind of where the idea came from, but a really skilled drummer. Again, thinking about what are ways that we can intervene or offer restorative ways to diminish suspensions and really giving kids an authentic experience that validates and affirms their identity. They came up with the Merrell Drum Academy, so I'll tell you about that. So in the Merrell Drum Academy, they did a root cause analysis as well. They found the same, and I guess I forgot to mention in the last one, but they did it with this one as well. They held affinity groups. They actually asked kids, like, do you feel like you belong? Are there ways that we could better include you? And so a lot of their goals have come exactly from student responses. So again, the same thing there was only one difference. One was they didn't feel like they had enough opportunities to self-identify in ways that they felt like they would like to express themselves. And the second was they didn't feel like Merrell or other experiences from schools have been giving them enough opportunities to lead. So they dreamt up the Merrell Drum Academy. There's different levels. I had a hard time following it because I'm not a drummer. Level 1, they are calling these students Cubs. Level 2, you're a Cub Cruiser, and we're trying to get you to level 3 where you become an official Merrell Tiger drummer, if you will. And so their goals within the program are to build self-esteem, courage, collaboration, growth, and also growth mindset when learning a new skill, which was when a lot of students were asking the affinity groups, what is something that's really tricky for you or something you really struggle with, or you wish your teachers would better understand. And I think out of I'd have to check, I think it's like 14 or 15 kids, 12 said when I'm learning a new skill, basically asking my teacher to chill out for a second. Like maybe they're not teaching it the way that I best understand, or I'm trying to advocate for myself. And maybe whether it's truth or perception, they're feeling like they wish they were given a little more grace in that. So this group meets at 2 o'clock, which is pretty cool. It was a voluntary 2 o'clock meeting during a recess. So they're given 2 recesses at the elementary level. So on Monday and Wednesdays, they meet at 2 o'clock in very targeted groups. This group is a little different. The last group was pulled via somewhat voluntary basis, but also recommendation on office referrals. This group is completely targeted with 12 second grade students that have the highest number of office referrals in the building. So instead of, obviously their parents could opt out or not, but we highly encouraged an opportunity for them to participate, and all 12 have taken advantage of it. So instead of doing a traditional check-in, check-out, where maybe a student is assigned to a staff member, they meet with them in the beginning of the morning, they set their goals for the day, and then they recalibrate at the end of the day. We're sort of doing the same thing, however, we're doing less talking and more drumming, and more talking around the same things you might have been talking in with the check-in, check-out, but we, perhaps less eye contact, it's not a lesser of a serious conversation, but we are trying to teach you a skill at the same time that we're trying to advise on our goals, or I should say Ms. Herford's team. They also are provided an opportunity, again, back to mainstream, an opportunity for leadership. They are offering it to all second graders as well on Tuesday afternoons after school to serve those kids. So, and they are looking forward, if you have time, their first performance they're gonna try to perform at the first PBIS assembly in May, so stay tuned for that date. So when I looked at this group, so again, they're pulled 2 times. They're very strategically broken up and pulled 2 times, either on Tuesday or Wednesday, for a very targeted social emotional learning, but also drumming course or class, if you will, trying to progress through the levels of Cub, Cruiser, and Tiger, but then they're also pulled in the afternoon. So same thing, let's see, okay, so we went 12 weeks, now let's just see after 3 weeks what impact we have had. So, and a different group, right? These are, not that the others weren't targeted, there were also optional students blended in with the group. This is a very targeted group, the top 12 students that have the most office referrals, so ranging anywhere from 2 to 14. Okay, so we are now beginning week 3. After the first 2 weeks, we track data on before, after, and then also the day of. So if those students are served on Tuesday and Wednesday, we might predict an uptick on Thursday or Friday because they didn't necessarily get that touch or that programming from Mr. Jordan. Very interesting. They're not showing that pattern. There have been no office discipline referrals from any of those 12 kids that have been an office discipline referral, meaning an administrator was called to support, or a classroom discipline referral as something that was dealt with in the classroom. So that's outstanding. When on average, I looked across the 12 students, they were averaging 3 to 4 a month. So I'm hopeful that we'll perhaps complete our first month with 1 more week, and that would be pretty exceptional to go now a month with students that were averaging anywhere from 3 to 4 and have no office discipline referrals. They also are averaging in terms of, we also look at attendance, right? Because it's a 2-part component, during the day and outside of the day. Out of the 12 students, they're averaging an 81.93 attendance rate, which really, if you think, it was only 4 times, right? So you miss one and we're already at 80%. So we're looking to continue and expand that program. Like I said, we're just serving second graders right now. But I will say too, although we don't necessarily have a documentation or data for that, the school-wide efforts in ways that we can think outside of the box to serve our kids, as opposed to traditional ways, has been, I would just say, exemplary. So kudos to the Merrell team in really thinking outside the box in terms of ways that we can serve kids, as opposed to purchasing more curriculums or loading other staff in the room. They've taken the staff that they have and really thought of really creative ways to allow opportunities for kids to succeed. So a big kudos to them. And I will pass it next to our outstanding new hire, Ms. Erica Oskins, to talk a little bit about, we work very collaboratively, but she is serving as our intermediate. So again, the schools that have been identified, along with Merrell, to talk about what her position entails.
Hello, everybody. My name is Erica Oskins. I'm the intermediate behavior coach. Recently joined the team in January, and I've had a wonderful opportunity to be able to establish some relationships within the intermediate schools. 2 of the main focuses that I have been engaging with is supporting and implementing effective school-wide processes around behavior, and at the tiered level, by collaborating with the MLSS teams and our PBIS team, Positive Behavior Intervention Supports, and really just trying to, with the PBIS teams, drive those 12 critical components of PBIS, the PBIS team as a whole, and being able to look at data and project what concerns are going to be and how to move forward with addressing the student population. Really trying to get that buy-in from staff, where how is this benefiting staff, how is this benefiting students, and trying to collaboratively work together to meet the student needs when it comes to the positive interventions and being proactive. Looking at school-wide expectations and really enforcing those in a positive way that gets not only buy-in from staff, but then the buy-in from the students, where they feel like they're being held accountable in a beautiful way versus a punitive manner. Looking at the behavioral instruction that's offered. So I do spend some time working with teachers on how to implement SEL activities into their lesson plans in order to address not only the academic engagement, but the behavioral and the emotional and cognitive engagement, to really see how behaviors and academics really align together. And when you have one strength and you have another strength and you combine them together, it produces the results that you want. And so not seeing them as two isolated components, but as one. And even taking the system of recognition to another level, where you're not just, oh, you got 5 stars, so now you get a prize, but then offering that very direct feedback to students that, one, not only recognizes their strength and the courage that it took to be able to do something, but then providing them with the kind of feedback that helps them to grow as young individuals. And working on providing that consistent implementation versus working in silos, working together in one stream to produce the most effective outcome. And then looking at ways we can develop as a team by looking at the different mindsets that we have, and coaching through a cultural humility lens, people over systems, and things like that, to really challenge the lens in which we see our students, in which we see our peers, to be able to provide that cultural, responsive practice that we desire to see, and to encourage us to push forward that equitable and proactive measure for engaging all of our students. Also looking at our discipline procedures by really focusing on Tier 1 interventions, like what's in place for the student at the Tier 1 level that's going to equip them and prepare them for success, but also hit on some of the social emotional components that are needed in order for them to grow and to excel, not just behaviorally, but also academically and as citizens in this community. And really challenging people to build their own capacity to be able to address the diverse needs of many of our students. And partnering with MLSS to not, again, where we have behavior as one driving force and academics as another driving force, but seeing that through the MLS model as, again, one stream, to be able to focus on both social emotional components and academic standards. So that's been a lot of what I've been doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Oskins, a powerhouse to have on the team, so we're super grateful. So Erica and I have spent the last year learning a whole lot about systems and structures within our building, and I'll kind of share projections that we have, and then I'll let Mr. Weir wrap up if he would like to. So like I said, we spotlighted Merrell today, but we have been working really closely with all administrative teams to really ask them to do a root cause analysis of their behavior data and really think outside the box in terms of their students. And what we have noticed is there maybe perhaps hasn't been as much consistency as we would like, and there are great ideas happening district-wide, but in terms of things that we are calibrating on in the area of social emotional behavior support, we would like to improve. And so here are three things that our team is setting as pillars for us to be really strategic about next year. We have always had, or at least, for the last several decades, had a universal social emotional behavioral, social emotional learning curriculum. However, my team right away, that was one of the charges that we took on. So we are about to complete we just completed our last meetings with our vendors, but really trying to find a curriculum that really truly serves our students. We feel like the one that I'm pretty hopeful, or I'm thinking that our team will exit. And here are some reasons why, and why we're putting this as a focus. We really feel like we need to provide a curriculum that offers our opportunities for our students to see windows and doors that are applicable to them. Our teachers' three of the biggest priorities in terms of a social emotional learning curriculum, or ways that they felt like their curriculum wasn't serving, was they wanted it to be representative of an urban setting. They wanted it to include conflict resolution as well as ways to engage, and they wanted it actionable in the moment. They wanted the catchphrases, they wanted the songs to be applicable to Beloit and what truly happens in Beloit, not a token phrase or something that you say that very few of our students would actually hear in their homes. And so I'm proud about the work that our team has put in. I think we're going to put forward a great suggestion to the board to adopt a new social emotional learning curriculum. The second is we have had many opportunities with restorative practices within the district, but some of those efforts have somewhat fallen by the wayside, or they're being implemented inconsistently at the buildings. And so I don't even want to call it a reboot, because I think we've had staff turnover in some of those areas, but really re-looking at restorative practices in terms of support, primarily number one, support for students, but also accountability, but justice within our system. So offering opportunities built into our system that provide opportunities for not only restorative practices, but restorative justice. So, and I think we have in the past highly been trained in circles. However, the other things we'd like to look at is using restorative practices and restorative justice district-wide to really look at anti-racism, bias, working at, like Erica alluded to, really affirming our effective statements with students, and just being collectively aware of what it means to say that we are well in our social, emotional, and behavioral well-being in terms of staff and students. The third thing that Eric alluded to too is really strengthening our positive behavior interventions and support. So looking at a tier one and saying the opportunities that you receive at Merrell should be no different than the opportunities that you receive at Hackett or any of the other elementaries, or same for the same intermediates. Making sure that we're providing our students a same or very similar experience based on the opportunities that we have for them at a universal level, but also looking to build our tiered services. And so really trying to systematize our approach to social, emotional, and behavioral well-being for students so that we're being consistent across the district. And so those are three of our overarching goals, but our goal will continue to look at a more systematized approach to help students. We think the proposals is what I'm alluding to with Young Kings, as well as the Merrell Drumline are great opportunities for kids, but when we think about adaptive change, they're really likely technical change. And so really looking at what is our system doing to perpetuate what we're seeing, as opposed to looking at small fixes, if you will. So that's a lot of our work that we're doing with a lot of our agencies, to think really globally about our system collectively, to look at making adaptive changes instead of small technical moves. All right. Good. Any questions about Young Kings or any of our?
Board members, any questions? Okay. So I have a couple comments and then some questions. One, this is a general statement, one about data. This is something that came up in our board evaluation, and it'll be something we end up talking to Dan about in the next year, about our representation in data. So this is based off of our being identified by DPI as being disproportionate in special education data. One part that I think that we're going to need is the data representation when we're making the presentations about. So I'll assume from the data, well, I guess from the data, the group that is overrepresented in the discipline of our students with IEP services is who? Out of our subgroups.
Students who identify as Black or African American, as well as Hispanic, is not specified by gender.
Okay. So that's the aspect of, I think that the first part, and the reason that I make these comments is, one, as we think about where we're at with the school district and some of the, like, there's much work to do. But one of the issues that we have to address is the experience of students in the classroom and what the learning environment is like. As a professional educator and even one who's worked in Beloit schools, I know what that issue is, especially when you're a person who hands out discipline. In this room, there's 18 people, I counted. Mr. Snow and I are the only two black males in this room. And so even as we begin to talk about things like restorative practices and restorative justice, sometimes people get lost in those words. But I guarantee you, if you go back to the time when he and I were in school, if you had to call Marilyn or call Millie, that was going to be a problem for us when we got home. And I think that, and then if it happened to go to Robert or Willard, it's going to be something else. You know, like in a 180-day school year, it's based off of individual interactions, students coming through the buildings. And sometimes we might have to take 10 days to make sure that the next 170 days are great days of learning. So I appreciate the work that you're doing. But that data representation is one that will need to be there so we can tell the story of what's actually happening in the buildings and to see who's being impacted in the classroom. One of the things I'm concerned about or would like to know about in the discipline, like what are the major type of code violations that are causing the suspensions? Is it fighting? Is it classroom level disruptions? Because one of the other things I think happens when people think about, when we talk this language about restorative practice, restorative justice, you know, underreporting is not helping, just not suspending students, because, you know, Darian and I might be the only two black males in the room, but if he and I are the ones fighting everybody in the room, it might be disproportionate based on our number, but we are the students who did the fighting. So that part is not going to change. In every school year, students present different behaviors. You know, one year it could be a lot of low-level offenses, and then one major. So the number of offenses to me, that doesn't skew my view, but it's actually what is happening in our classrooms. I think that's important. I'm pleased with the programs that you displayed that are taking place at Merrell. But I think that even as we approach this, this is major work for our district because it goes to one of the major issues of students' everyday experiences and the things that we know people are saying about our schools. We have levels of achievement for many students and experiences for students that are great, but there are some things, and even as a building principal, the administrator, you spoke about some consistency, the administrator, those who administer the code of conduct and actually assign disciplinary consequences, making sure that that expectation level of teachers matches and that consistent behavior, what the teachers expect from the administrators who are handing out disciplinary consequences by the code of conduct, and to understand, like, you know, what's the strike zone, balls and strikes, and for students to also know that. So I think that as you mentioned some work that is happening, but that having a system together and that it's consistent between buildings and actually each level. Why would there be opportunities where students are being targeted and suspensions are being reduced in one school, but those practices don't exist in another place? We're coming to the end of a school year and always summertime and opportunities to do things, but it's the plan. It's the plan that the adults have for the students, because we are the ones who are supposed to be running the place and taking their concerns into account. So another question is, so what has been the impact on students who are receiving IEP services? Because I would want to know that data too. Like, as you mentioned, those students that are in the program, are these actions being effective at reducing their suspensions?
So the intent behind this, the set-aside funds, is to address, to keep kids from being referred for special education. So our intent would be at the end of this year to then look at where we were at in terms of referrals and that impact. The specific groups, I'd have to go back and look to see of the students that are receiving these interventions, how many of them have IEPs versus students that don't. I don't have that data right now. As the primary intent, okay, Carrie might have it. The primary intent, though, is to disrupt the systems that have resulted in an over-identification of students for services through an IEP.
Are you interested in the specific numbers?
Oh, yeah, I'll take them.
Okay, cool. So for Drumline, it was 2 students, and the program, I will just say, to try to keep anonymity, they both have more than 5.
Right.
And they haven't had any since the program. And there's just 1 student in Young Kings, and same thing, if you're okay, we'll just say above 5. And there was 1. So, an increase. And I will just share collectively, I've spent the year solidifying my thoughts around a lot of what you said, Mr. Levy, and I completely agree, and I will say too that that's how I've advocated with my voice to my bosses too, to say we really need to systematize our approaches with the administrative teams so that our efforts can be more impactful, because they're the instructional leaders of those teams, right? And the ones that are gonna help facilitate the adaptive change. So I just want you to always share your sentiment.
Right, and then another place too is, you know, and this is even in the evaluative part for principals, the learning environment. It's a part of the evaluation rubric, and I think it's an area of emphasis to make sure that something different is happening in the classroom, like you said, the preventative end. But there's a role for everyone along the way, and like I said, and even if you have to pick up, and like I said, when I look at this, I'm looking at it as a community issue. I understand the specific aspect of the program, but it's touching on that level of discipline and behavior. And this is a cultural issue for us as a district that we have to address and move forward on, because everyone is writing their story about how we are not something based on those things. For me, it's not to pretend that we're not, but to address it head on. And like I said, the learning environment, that's a teacher responsibility. Student behavior, as we're teaching young people to be accountable, but then also we've got expectations for their parents also. Parent, guardian, whoever, like what I say to young people is whoever sent you here today. Did they send you here to get the lesson? And then what do we need to do together? So, but those are the types of things that we'll begin to talk about. So thank you for your work.
All right, thank you very much.
Item 2B, Even Start Family Literacy Program.
All right, as the team comes together, we have Rochelle Elliott, Cindy Lobby, and Darian Snow talking and giving an overview of the Even Start Family Literacy Program.
Thank you, Dr. Keyser. You took my introduction. Hi, I'm Rochelle Elliott, Director of Early Literacy and Professional Development. First up tonight, we're going to have speaking Cindy Lobby, who is the Even Start Family Literacy Coordinator. We also have Darian Snow here from Blackhawk Technical College. He's the Manager of Learning Support at BTC.
Thank you very much. As you can see from our first slide, this is the mission, the vision, and the goals of Even Start. Aside with all of this, we also teach our parents how to be their child's first and best teacher and how to navigate the American school system as well as, more specifically, the Beloit school system. Then we have the 30-year history, and as you know, the first grant was written by George Kolak, whom this building is named after, so we take a lot of pride in that. We also had a 21st Century Community Learning Center grant for 9 years that provided nighttime as well. It provided the nighttime, and then the federal grant provided the morning. And the next page of the 30-year history, we had several smaller grants and donations. You can see those there. We have our collaborating partners. The main ones are the school district, Blackhawk Technical College, and then we have all the other ones. Also, you can see the locations of the, over the 30 years where we have been, and we are currently at Brother Dutton School. Okay, so the current funding, which would be Darian and myself. For the school district, we have Title I funds that fund 4 half-time paraeducators, the coordinator position. We have the 4K teacher, and the full-time para are supplied by the school district because our 4K is open to any 4K child in the district. They do not have to be Even Start eligible to come to Brother Dutton for 4K.
Good evening. Darian Snow from Blackhawk Technical College again. We actually team up with the school district on the funding. We provide the actual instruction for the Even Start program. We put in $47,000 with the part-time people and some of the college funding that we do for supplies and different things like that. Some of the other things, like I said, we do it 5 days a week. We have our instructors there where they're working, doing the instruction for 2 hours, and then they actually participate in the family time. Times are Monday through Friday, 8:15 to 10:45. As of this last data, was 22 adult students enrolled, Even Start, and 14 adult students that BTC that don't really have kids there, which was a total of 36. And some of the instruction that we do face-to-face instruction. When we're in COVID, we actually did something called My Ed Choice, which it still allowed us to provide instruction, but My Ed Choice is actually where you can either be in the building face-to-face with students, you could actually be having students Zoom in, or you can actually have recorded sessions that a student can listen to if they were not able to make it that day. So we did do that at one point in time. We focused on math, reading, writing, speaking, listening, social science, English proficiency. Some of the methods are classroom, computerized instruction, small group, individualized, collaborative learning. The other things we do is the employment, skills, career stuff that we try to get them ready for employment and jobs. They do job shadowing. And then we actually have, for our grant, we have to do what's called a pre and post test for the placement to show growth for our grants to be able to report that back to the state. We did lose one of our grants about 2 years ago now. And we believe in it at Blackhawk so much where we rolled the funding that would have been normally in for the Even Start into our bigger grant so we can still offer services. But we may have to look at it. We just got word last night that we did get a little cut. So we got to look and see what we can continue to do or what we may have to scale back a little bit on for this coming year, or next year rather. I think that's.
This is the one with your notes. No, you're up still.
I'm still up. There you go. Okay. Okay, so the current Sdb programming. So 8:15 to 10:45, we have the infant room, toddler room, 3-year-old preschool. The infant is obviously a daycare setting, childcare. But the toddler room, we have a curriculum, and the 3-year-old preschool room, we have a curriculum. Then 10:45 to 11:15 is family time, and you can see all of the different activities that we offer during family time. Our 4K classroom is there from 7:30 until 2:30. So during family time, as you can see, we want the parents to really work with their child. We do various things. We read every single day. We might do arts and crafts, we do board games, we teach them nursery rhymes, we do many of the centers that go with the curriculum we will put out during family time so that the parents can learn how to do those things. We try to incorporate activities that they can take home and redo at home. So we'll do something very simple, counting something, and then we'll say, when you go home and you're setting the table, count the forks, count the spoons. So we try to make it something that they can, again, be their child's first and best teacher. And the family time is 30 minutes daily, and that's the entire Even Start staff, whether it's Black Hawk Tech or school district people. So the next one, you can see our current enrollment, the demographics, and the homeschool. We have 9 infants, 9 toddlers, 11 3-year-olds. 4 of the 4K students have parents enrolled in the Even Start program. 5 of the students do not have parents enrolled. They come from the district, but it was their choice to come to Even Start. So currently we have 33 students, but we are, as the pandemic is, lessening up, and we hope continues that way, we have more and more families coming in.
So Cindy talked a little bit about that our 4K is open, next slide please, to all SDB families. So currently we're at 9 students in that 4K classroom. The average classroom for the school district in 4K has about 19 students. You can see the average monthly attendance that we've had, and it's very typical to what we were having during the school year. With COVID, we have had 5 new enrollments since February. So we've had a nice uptick in attendance. Next slide, thank you. You can take a look at our staffing. We've got 7 SDB staff members with 1 full-time 4K teacher. We've got a coordinator, little over half-time, 1 full-time para FTE, and then 2 FTE paras, 16 hours a week. You can see down there, technically it's like 0.46, so it's a 1.84, and then the BTC staffing of half-time for 15 hours a week.
So for the forward planning, which Darian and I are doing together. You just didn't come up, Darian. So we are, of course, recruiting, trying to get more families. We try to work together closely to see how we can, really increase. And I can say this year, the pandemic did a lot of damage to everybody. And when we were trying to do things distance and then coming back, there was a lot of fear. And right now, in our beginning level, we have 18 adults, and they do come consistently. So it's very amazing to see all of that. So that of it. But we will continue to do, as you can see, all of these things. We haven't had the community partners come back in to do parenting classes yet, just because they're waiting, we're waiting to make sure it's safe for them to come in. Everybody took a hit with their budgets. So we're going to hopefully by next year have the health department come back in, sexual assault recovery come back in, the library and people like that come in and actually do activities with either the adults or the families.
Yes. We also want to make sure that the students have an opportunity to be able to transition to, either post-secondary at some point in time. So we're going to have our advisors and admission specialists coming there pretty often, figuring out what we can do to make sure students either transition to employment or actually come to Black Hawk or a 4-year, but like I said, we'd rather have it at Black Hawk. The career exploration, we want to make sure that if they understand what they want to do, sometimes that helps in transitioning or motivating them to actually want to go to that next step. So, and I think that's it for me.
Do you have any questions?
Board members?
I have several. On the staffing numbers that were there, I'm assuming that's the staff that is currently at Even Start and does not include the 2 positions that are still posted?
We did interview and we have hired 1 person that would be going in the baby room. She just has to take the test and then apply for the paraeducator license and she'll be ready to go.
Okay.
And then
But
we're
that is not included in the numbers on the slide? Okay.
Michelle, no.
It is not included in the numbers because they were not hired.
Right, okay. And I know that we've been, looking for staff for a good part of the year. Have there been any families that we've not been able to accept due to staffing levels?
No, we've accepted everyone.
Okay. And I know one of the things that, Mr. Snow, you talked about was students transitioning into Black Hawk Tech. What is the availability of financial aid for those individuals that might transition out there?
And that will be based on a case-by-case thing based on the student. There is financial aid for different individuals, and we do have our scholarships that could help with some students too from our college advancement area.
As I know, you mentioned that you're doing a lot of recruiting and trying to bring people in, which I agree, it's a fabulous program. We really need to expand that quite a bit. What would be the I guess, ability to increase staffing again if we need to due to the number of families that are attending?
What was the question again?
Just looking at staffing, if we continue to increase the number of families participating in Even Start, what's the likelihood of being able to increase staffing both from the school district side and also from Black Hawk Tech?
Ours would be based on, some numbers, and I can't give you those right now, but I can get them to you if you need them, based on the American Family Literacy Grant that we get from the state. That's what they really look at. And then pre and post testing, which actually showing some type of growth in between, that's huge at the federal level and state level. That would actually help us be able to pitch for more for staffing.
And I would say in conjunction to what Dr. Snow had shared, this is part of the reason why we keep these monthly enrollment and attendance numbers, because those are critical not only for Black Hawk Tech grants, but also for grants that we would apply for as a school district and an entity. But they also play into how we staff at the elementary level. So the number of students, now with Even Start, as Cindy alluded to kind of in the history, though, the nexus or the genesis of this was a hybrid program. Not quite a school, not quite daycare, but a hybrid of the both. And so we play in this kind of limbo because we're not necessarily held to the state licensing standards that daycare centers are, because we have the school entity piece, but we're also not quite a school because of our age of toddlers and infants that we take. And so that provides a different set of rules that Ms. Elliott and Ms. Lobby talk about in terms of what are the staffing levels needed. So please elaborate because I know that was generalized, either one.
So we do have the one other position that we can still hire. If we would need no other positions, we would come back to the board and make those requests.
Okay. That's me.
So I have a couple of questions. One of the reasons that this was brought back to committee to have an update is maybe a month or so ago, we did have there was talk of moving the Even Start program. I saw on one of the slides, it says there's a new 2-year contract. So so for the 22-23 school year and the 23-24 school year, we're currently at Brother Dutton?
Correct.
Okay. So that was an issue and a concern. I think for us as school board members, I'll say for myself, when you have a room full of people come to a board meeting because they are using a district program and they're concerned about a change that is happening to the program, that invites some inspection and some questioning and to get understanding, to be responsive to our community. I'll share that in my conversation with Dr. Keyser, that was a point of, I assume, I believe that you've got the best intents for the program, but we're hearing a segment of our community who actually uses the program say the change that you're offering, we don't want that. And so one of the things that that's an issue, and I wanted to bring that up. I know that Even Start, it is not only a program that services our Latino families, but our culture in our district, maybe not by design, but by chance, in our community and our history, those families have found a base there. And when we listen to many of the stories that the families and individuals shared about great success stories of people using the program and growing it into something. So for me, that's a point of clarity that it might not have been designed as such, but in this manner, we do have something that is working really well for a segment of our community. What can we do to enhance that? I was greatly distressed and saddened by some of the commentary in our community that the board, the administrators, people are trying to do things intentionally to be detrimental to the people that are accessing those services. And some of that, we get lost in the pettiness of people and things. But what is there? But there's at this level, since it's come and people have come to the meetings and addressed things, I do have a concern to get to the kind of the bottom of that. What do you feel is the disconnect that has happened between what is actually happening and that response? What is driving that? Where are things being missed that those concerns are being expressed in that way that they have been?
I would say, in my opinion, they would love to have a relationship. They want to be included in decisions that are made concerning them. They want to have a relationship with, whether it be the school board or administration. Anything else you want to add?
Okay. Well, that would be for the administrator, because that's not the board's role, but to close that gap between the community that we're serving and those programs, that's an interest. So there was a question that had been raised about the staffing. Board Member Schneider asked some also. What was the issue with the staffing, and has that been resolved?
Yes, that's been resolved. Thank you.
Okay. There was also a plan of expansion of services, or some other things that were expressed. What is being done now? Because I think the relocation, there was mention of going to Merrell, and there were some other things that could be provided. So now that things have not changed, what was lost, or those things that were intended, how are those things going to be brought about if they were decided that those things were good for the program at once?
And I think one of the questions was the technological piece over at the Brother Dutton, and even going back to our president in our IT area, there was concerns. We put probably about $400,000 or $500,000 into the library, which is right across, and we were going to actually be able to do some My Ed Choice. With actually doing that renovation, our president and the board wasn't willing to put that much money into a location that wasn't ours from the IT standpoint. Okay. We could see what we could do, but the building is really old, and so from our IT's CIO, they weren't really willing to do that. So, from Blackhawk standpoint.
Okay. Gotcha.
I think, as Cindy said, we're also going back to our community partners now that the pandemic is hopefully waning, and asking them to come back and grant rights so we can have more services, very similar to what we've had in the past.
Okay. So I guess the last question then is, the same as a PTO, what steps are being taken to address the concerns of those who use the program so that relationship that you said is actually there? Like, if it was Todd, it might be the Todd PTO. What is happening to address those concerns and bring the district into a relationship?
Just from kind of an inside-outside partner. From what I heard, I was at the one of the meetings where they had the concerns, but I think it was just process from what I've seen. And in talking with a few individuals after and a few days later, they felt like they weren't included. And I think that's one of the pieces from Blackhawks end and maybe even the school districts end too, to make sure that they're included. I think that's what I heard throughout that was a 2.5 hour conversation that we had with the group. So
I think now that Blackhawk Tech knows how much money they're getting, we will all be sitting down again to come up with a plan, how we can move forward and how the best we can address all these services. So they just found out last night, correct? So that'll be something we'll be discussing very soon.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm thankful for Blackhawk Tech's partnership with that. But I think particularly as a community issue, Dr. Kieser is here, and he's over, the district on the operational day-to-day side. But very much so, those that are closest to the ground with those parents, those are the relationships that are built. And there's a flow of information that has to happen so that those constituents can be served. Blackhawk Tech aside is our partner. And like you said, I understand the answer that you gave about Blackhawk Tech's assessment of cost to improve IT. But when you're doing things in partnership, sometimes your partner makes decisions and you can or can't go. But my concern, even beyond that, is the responsibility of the district. Because once we understand what our partner will or will not do, like I said, that communication, that relationship, it's vital that from the ground up to Dr. Kieser and then to Dr. Kieser to ourselves, that we're all together and moving in one concerted direction, so it doesn't look like people who are all working together are not working together. All right, so thank you.
I think one other thing we did in the past, which worked out very well, and Tony and Rose and Maria were part of it, we would have a monthly meeting, what we would call a parenting meeting, but we would have different administrators come over and explain the different things, like Tony, you did the DLI program. I think Rose and Maria, you did that with Tasha. And then we would also discuss chain of command, who you go to if there's an issue, and all of those things. And I think that would be something positive to bring back so that they start seeing all of the administration of the school district.
Thank you.
Okay,
Yes.
Thank you.
Uh, 2C, TLE Bilingual Programs Update.
Good evening, Teaching and Learning Equity Committee of the Board of Education. Happy Tuesday. My name is Tony Bosco. I'm the Director of Instructional Leadership and Equity, and I have with me
I'm Rosa Maria Larson. I'm the Biliteracy Instructional Leadership Coordinator.
So we're going to run through a brief presentation with you just as a status update for bilingual programs as we wrap up the 21-22 school year and head into the 22-23 school year. And Ms. Larson is going to kick us off.
So I just wanted to take a moment and just reflect and let you know that 2022, our DLI program is 10 years old. So that's very exciting. So happy anniversary to the program. We started with 72 students in 2012. I remember those little kindergartners walking down the hallway trying to keep it together because, learning how to walk in a line is kind of hard at that age. And then now they are at the high school. They're in 9th grade. See those little faces, and they look so mature. But we have almost 1,000 students enrolled in this program. So we're very proud of that. Okay, so we wanted to make you aware that DLI is not the only bilingual program that we have in the district. We have several. We have, got to read it over here. So we have School Family Partnership, Developing College and Career Readiness. We have our English Language Learner Services. That's what we started out with to serve the needs of our students who are learning to speak English as a second language because they speak another language at home. We have our DLI program, and then we also have our World Languages programs. Basically, they all have the goal of becoming bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural. So there's different entry points for students, any student that wants to become bilingual.
So we're going to talk briefly tonight about instruction, profession development, program development support, parent community participation, then finally increased graduation rates with some next steps moving into next year, as I stated at the beginning. If you go to the next slide, thank you. The School District Beloit's bilingual programs include a 50-50 two-way immersion model. Essentially what this means is beginning in 4K all the way through 9th grade this year and eventually through 12th grade, our students who enrolled in dual language experience their learning in a 50-50 model, which means they'll have half of their day, half of their instruction in English, and half of their instruction in Spanish. As that program, from its inception, our decision to, as far as the curricular aspects, were to include English, language arts, and mathematics as the 50% on the English side, and then science, social studies, and Spanish language arts as the 50% on the Spanish side. That will continue to matriculate through the high school. As Ms. Lorson stated, we have students that are at Beloit Memorial High School right now in dual language that are in this program. Will roll into 10th grade next year and continue on by 2025. We'll be 4K to 12th grade, fully bilingual, fully dual language across the district, except for 2 elementary schools, those being Gaston and Converse. As students enter the high school, one of the challenges that we've had over the last couple of years is really being able to articulate our curricula between those transitions. So when you go from 5th grade to 6th grade, there's a change in the literacy resources that we use. When you go from 8th grade to 9th grade, there's a change in some of the resources that we use. So trying to really build that K-12 picture around our curricula is very important. Because as students transition between grade levels, as we continue to use those connections between the English and the Spanish to strengthen their language development over the course of their time in the program, it's very important that there is curricular alignment. You go to the next page, Dr. Kieser, and that's where we're working really hard over the last several years to really build that cross-departmental collaboration. When we look at adopting social studies resources, adopting Spanish science resources, even when we did the K-5 English or literacy adoption last year, we really look at curricular adoption as a team approach, as a collaborative opportunity to make sure that as we evaluate these resources, we're looking at how they articulate both on the English side and then also how they support our dual language programs. Are the science materials that we're looking to adopt available in Spanish as well? And that goes into our decision about whether or not we adopt different materials at in different content areas. The other thing that we're working on over the course of this next summer and into next year is as these courses matriculate into the high school to really do some strong curriculum development. We are really aligning our standards across the English language arts, the WIDA English language development standards, and also the WIDA Spanish language development standards to make sure that as we design these courses, particularly in SLA, that there is alignment not only from an English language perspective and the standards that they're supposed to be meeting to meet proficiency according to the WIDA, the access test that they take, but also to make sure that, as Rosemaria talked about, they're college and career ready as they exit the system. That's very important. So this summer, our curriculum work will involve working on our 6 through 8 curricula, our Spanish language arts curricular revisions, as well as working with our high school team to make sure that there's alignment between Spanish language arts, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, and what those students will be entering as they enter the high school Spanish language arts course sequence. Next slide, talking about professional development. We've really focused this year, and we'll continue to focus this last year, on improving our approach to standards and instruction. The Wisconsin adopted new English language arts standards last year. WIDA just rolled out new English language development standards, and we are familiarizing ourselves with the WIDA Spanish language arts standards. And you see, you typically have one set of standards to try to navigate, and in Spanish language arts in particular, we're working through 3 different sets of standards to navigate.
Then last summer when we were writing our curriculum, Mr. Bosco, as we were rewriting the format for our teachers to do that work, we did include the English language development standards on our curriculum. We are doing a deeper dive in teaching our teachers what that means over the next few years. But it really kind of elevates that, because it's, for our multilingual learners, it's very important, but for all of our students, it is important to have especially the way that the reading research is going right now, focusing more on that language development is pretty important.
Programs, yep, I think we're fine. Thank you. Over the course of the 10-year history of the dual language program, as DLI continues to matriculate into the high school, it's important for us to be adaptive. As our model shifts from kind of the traditional ESL student, English as a second language learner student model of direct support to one that is truly a dual language 50-50 two-way immersion model, our staffing and our approach will change a little bit. Instead of working to have ESL teachers push in to support or pull out to support, the vast majority of our English language learners will be served through our dual language program at the same time as native English speakers who are interested in becoming bilingual will be served through that program. And so it's important for us to be, again, adaptive as those student enrollment, the population shifts a bit. And one of the things that we're going to begin to do over the course of the next couple of years is transition our ESL staff to serve more through the dual language program rather than in isolation from the dual language program. And that aligns, as Ms. Lorson was talking about, with the ELD standards and really making sure that all teachers across the district understand second language acquisition, but that also those students have opportunity for support not only in the dual language Spanish classes, but in their core classes as well, especially as they matriculate into those classes at the high school level. And you want to add to that? Okay. And then parent and community participation.
Okay. And what we have done is that really increasing the connection from home to school. With the addition of the bilingual homeschool liaisons, they have been instrumental in reaching out to our families and really opening that two-way communication between the school and the home, knowing that schools are accessible, schools are a safe place, that they are welcome to come and learn, alongside with the children, what different things that they are doing in the school. We are continuing our work with our Todos Unidos with Tulio Duran. He is leading those different sessions. We had one in January that was very successful at the high school, where we opened it up to the community and to families for them to learn more about furthering their education, different opportunities that they can do to adult education opportunities that they had there. We've also had them, they are training with CISA 2. There's a series for family engagement that they have been going through to kind of make more meaningful connections rather than, starting with, come to our event, those sorts of things, but being more strategic with how do we open the door to make sure that families are also aware of the academic things that are happening in school and how they can support at home.
As a member of Hanover, we occasionally get research articles from the consortium, and one of the research pieces that we shared with the bilingual homeschool liaisons is a family literacy toolkit. And one of the things that we're really looking to extend our outreach efforts with our families is not just about kind of the social supports and access to those kinds of things, but also developing a better communication with families about what do our literacy structures and programs look like? How can the school support you? How can you support the students? And some of the things that very explicitly through our American Reading Company early literacy program, what can you specifically focus on at home with your child to help them grow in their reading ability and the importance of text in the home and those kinds of things, and how important it is for school and family to partner around that kind of thing. So that's outside of the typical role of a bilingual homeschool liaison, but they have those relationships with those families, and be able to have those kinds of conversations is really going to be beneficial down the road. Next slide. As we're constantly looking at enrollment, we're constantly looking at service delivery. One of the things with strong dual language, really from kindergarten or 4K all the way up to 8th grade, is our need for some support at the intermediate and elementary levels has changed because the service delivery is provided through DLI. But that has not been the case at the high school, because the high school is in the first year of dual language. And so when we look at the high school ESL numbers, there are 200 English language learners at Beloit Memorial High School right now, and they had 4 ESL teachers to serve them. With a dual language model that's only in its infancy as far as being in first grade, they needed additional support to serve those students in the core at Beloit Memorial. So one of the things that we're looking to do for next year to really continue to build our service delivery for those students is to add some ESL FTE, some dual language support at Beloit Memorial High School. As I said, we'll be increasing the dual language into 10th grade. And so not only is it for our ELL students, but also our dual language students, and then any newcomer students that we might have come to Beloit Memorial High School and to Beloit that are of high school age. Typically what happens in that situation is those newcomers would struggle to find their place with available support in the core, but as that dual language program goes all the way through 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grades, those students will be able to engage in core instruction in their language, their first language, which will help our graduation rates in the end. We're very excited about that as an opportunity.
Okay, and also in our school district, we are one of 15 districts in the state that is approved to offer the Global Scholars Award as well as the Seal of Biliteracy. It's a very prestigious award. It was started out in California, and it basically is a seal that goes on your transcript, on your diploma, that says that you are fully bilingual, fully biliterate. So that's something exciting that we have going. We have had a couple students graduate. We have one, and then we have another one graduating this year with that seal. Just finishing up those requirements. But as of right now, the last report that we received from the advisor for that program at the high school is that we have 35 ninth graders who are interested in that seal. So that's something to look forward to in a few years.
And that's to have a couple of SEAL graduates, Seal of Biliteracy graduates, and DLI is only in 9th grade. That we have the structure there. It's ripe. We just have to get the rest of those DLI students up through the program. As we transition to next steps, we added Converse as our 4th elementary dual language immersion school. And we started out by doing 4K in kindergarten, and then also a 2nd and 3rd grade split. And this next year, we'll add 1st grade. So Converse will be fully DLI next year, which will be wonderful for that school community. We already talked about the curricular review and alignment that we're doing 612 in Spanish language arts. We continue to work with Mark Grunsky and Meredith Falkovich and Kelly Grorud to align that science and social studies work between the English and the Spanish to make sure that students taking Spanish science or Spanish social studies are still preparing themselves for that high level of rigor that they're going to need for college and career readiness. We're continuing to build out the pathway. We have the 10th grade Spanish language arts, science, and social studies course sequences in the books ready for next year, and we're continuing to explore what that will look like for those kids as they matriculate into 11th grade the year after. really in dual language and in CLE biliteracy, we're looking for students to be language proficient by the end of 10th grade, entering into 11th grade, so they can qualify for the CLE biliteracy from a language proficiency perspective by 11th grade. And then, because one of the things that we don't want students to do is we're looking, and this is on the slide, how can we intersect with the Career Academy model so that students can choose a career pathway, but add that layer of bilingualism as something that's just going to really put them over the top as far as being ready for their college and career of choice. And then continuing to analyze bilingual program outcomes in programming, we're continuing to look at staffing and what those numbers as far as enrollment, because our program is only as strong as our enrollment. We have to continue to recruit. We're getting ready to send something out with the help of Ms. Christopa and her wonderful 3-person department, or 2.1 person department. I'm only saying that because I know the 0.1. But just really being able to communicate with the community. I got a postcard from Parkview. I think everybody in this room probably got a postcard from Parkview about what's going on. So we're going to send some postcards to Parkview and let them know about dual language, because I think that's the kind of tact that we need. Exactly. Those are the things that we need to do to make sure this program is recognized, not only in Beloit, but also in the Turner District, Orfordville, Janesville, Clinton, all of those. And then understanding those staffing needs, because honestly, recruitment and retention of staffing is probably our biggest challenge with dual language. And that's something that, over the course of the next few years, we will finally get the program all the way to the promised land as far as 12th grade. And then we'll be able to, start backfilling and making sure that we've got the structures to recruit and retain and train the DLI teachers that we have. And as you saw those numbers increase from 72 to 969, we've got 3 more years of enrollment to include in that. And, we'll be back in a couple years and we'll be pushing 1,500 students, I believe, in the dual language program, which is very exciting. You want to close us out?
Sure, yep. Just, thank you. I don't have anything else. You did a
Board
good
members,
job.
any questions?
Do you have any questions? I guess that would be a good.
Yeah, I just
good
want to go
question.
back to I know as you talked about the increase of the program and getting to the high school level, make sure I understand the concern. So because the dual language instruction is happening in science and social studies, there's like an increased need in sections so that you have like the DLI sections, or what?
It's a repurpose.
Okay.
So the way that happens, right, and that's the same thing that we've done all the way through, is when we need sections, like, for instance,
Yes.
our social studies teacher will teach 3 sections of 9 and 3 sections of 10. That replaces 1 social studies FTE, because that social studies still is a graduation requirement and fulfills that.
Okay.
So it's no new staff at all.
Right. And so when you say like the repurpose of the ESL, is that like they're just moving over?
So
Because that's a different, I just mean like that's a different, not that there's more FTE, but that's a different section, right?
we
Than just,
Go ahead.
no, we have an FTE that's out there. There was a halftime between 2 schools that we are going to be using to support that.
okay.
Right, and then at the intermediates, each intermediate school currently has 2 ESL teachers. And so as we transition to that biliteracy instructional coach, and I missed that on the slide, but I did want to touch on that real quick. On the English side, we have literacy instructional coaches that support literacy throughout the building. On the dual language side, those literacy instructional coaches do not typically serve the dual language program because they don't have the Spanish, the language proficiency, nor the second language 2-way immersion proficiency. So by transitioning some of these ESL positions to biliteracy instructional coaches, they will be able to support the DLI side, the second language side, but then also at the intermediate level in particular, it's a struggle for 2 FTE in 6th, 7th, and 8th grade to serve Spanish language, arts, science, and social studies across 3 grade levels. And so by transitioning that second ESL FTE, we'll have 1 science, FTE 6.8, 1 social studies, FTE 6.8, 1 Spanish language, arts 6.8. So that'll really help us recruit and retain, because teachers won't have 6 preps. So that's going to be huge.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry to be long-winded on
No,
that.
I understand, but that, yeah, I was trying to, all right, appreciate that, thank you. 2D, BH 365.
All right, so this is coming up for the first time. This is a curricular resource purchase that Mr. Grunsky and Mr. Bosco will update, and then we'll bring it back next month for action.
So as Mr. Grunsky presented, January, I believe, excuse me, as we are working through kind of a K-12 social studies update, some curriculum revisions, adjusting our scopes a bit. As we continue to do that work, additional resources to make sure that our students have access to multiple perspectives in social studies, that we're adding to a tech set that is well represents our diverse population here in the school district of Beloit, and making sure that our resources and materials are culturally relevant and responsive to our student populations. And so as we do the work of the social studies, particularly at 6-8, Mr. Grunsky and his teams have explored our opportunities, and the Black History 365 is the best resource that we could find as a sole source provider. There are not a lot of opportunities with this kind of text that are currently available. And the things that really helped us kind of land on this as a resource were not only the quality of the text, the connection to the curricular rewrites and designs that we're doing, but also understanding the digital resources and the other components that went with that. And then lastly, the ability of BH365 come in and do deep level professional development for our teams was very important for us as well.
Board members, any questions? Okay.
All right, thank you.
How's this one? It says action, or we're just discussing, or?
We just want.
We're gonna
note
move
that
it
it's gonna
forward
be
to-
a-
gotcha,
the full
gotcha.
board's gonna-
3A, summer school, 2022.
So this is here for action item. It actually will be, we presented it here, but the motion we would like to adjust to move to the full board for discussion. We want to inform the full board and the community as to the summer school updates, and we are looking forward to opening up registration tomorrow morning. So we did not receive any questions over the past month, so at this time, all we're really looking for is that motion to move to the full board for discussion, because it has been moved out of action into discussion at the full board.
All right, so as we did discuss this last month, is there a motion to move or recommend approval for the 2022 summer school program to the full board for discussion?
So moved.
It's been moved and properly seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And that will move forward for discussion.
Thank you.
All right. And we are at item 4, our closing, our next meeting date. The next meeting date of the Teaching, Learning, Equity, and People Services Committee will be Tuesday, May 17th, 2022 at 5:30 p.m. Is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second.
Been moved and properly second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And unanimous. All right, we are adjourned.
All right, good evening. The time is 7:05, and at this time, I'd like to call the Human Resources Committee of a Whole to order. Ms. Shope, could we please have a roll call for attendance?
Anderson. Amy Levy.
Here.
Sean Levy.
Present.
Miller.
Present.
Schneider.
Present.
Semrau.
Present.
And Ruff.
Present.
All members are present except Anderson.
Thank you. And Board Member Anderson had a last-minute work obligation arise, so he will not be here the rest of the evening either. Thank you. All right, at this time, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Semrau, second by Levy to approve the agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. That takes us to item 1D, approval of the minutes for April 5th, 2022. For April 5th. Does anybody have any discussion on the minutes, or would anybody like to make a motion?
I move approval of the Human Resources April 5th minutes.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by A. Levy, second by S. Levy to approve the minutes for April 5th, 2022 for the Human Resources Committee. Any discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. That takes us to item 2A. If anybody would like to go into closed session, a motion may be made to convene the Human Resources Committee into closed session pursuant to Section 19.85, Parent 1, Parent C of the Wisconsin State Statutes relative to considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. Okay, seeing none, we are moving on to item 2B, which is the discussion of employment recommendations, Exhibit A and B. Any discussion?
Yes. Question for Exhibit A, the sub-school counselor location district, is that a full-time sub, i.e. an 8-hour day?
Yes, this is new for us. We had the opportunity to have a retired counselor agree to be a sub. So any counselor who happens to be gone, we will now be able to have a sub for that counselor that can serve in that capacity.
Okay. So my first question, asking if that was an 8-hour day, since the amount is down as hourly, that's $423.44 a day. Is that accurate?
That is accurate. It's they based it on the hourly rate at the time in which the person retired from the district, and so that's why it was established that way. It's because of the specialized nature and certification of the individual.
So I guess my next question is this whenever we need a sub, or is this kind of like the permanent subs where they're housed in the building? What is our expectation for use? And I know it won't be perfect, but what is our expectation of use?
The individual on the personnel recs tonight is serving as a long-term sub due to a maternity leave.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so
it's, and that's it.
And that's it. That's the duration of her employment, is the
Okay.
maternity leave.
okay, is that 6 weeks? Is that?
I don't know the end date.
Okay, it was described to me as slightly different, so I'll follow up on the length of the leave and then the location. So that was not provided to me.
Okay, so just to be clear, that's $2,117.20 a week for however many weeks that leave is. And I just want to make sure that that is the most fiscally responsible option that the district has to fill this position.
I can only speak to filling the position. I can't speak to the other part of the question, but it would be vacant if we did not put a sub in there. And so the building that particular staff member is at would go without a counselor.
Okay, so was this position posted, or did someone just reach out?
For a long-term sub, we would post that position for that. So I will find out more details and provide the board with an update on that. I apologize for not having all those details.
No, that's okay. And then my other question is, I see that there are 2 administrators listed for Cunningham to receive additional pay, which if you're doing additional work completely makes sense. I'm just curious because I believe we've seen this before. How many people in total are filling in for that open position?
So we now have filled this position with a dean position, and so this period of time, these 2 individuals were both picking up the extra duties of that missing administrator. The reason why it's coming now was we had thought that this was already had gone through our process, and it had not, so that's why we're bringing it before the board at this time. Otherwise, it would have come at the end of March.
Okay, thank you. That's all of my questions for Exhibit A, so I will yield, but I do have additional questions for Exhibit B.
Thank you very much. Does anybody else have any questions for Exhibit A? Hearing none, please go ahead.
Thank you. So I just recently found out as a parent that the track season at the intermediate level is not happening. And so I'm wondering if the administration would like to pull the intermediate girls track coach position that's listed on the posting, the recommendations.
That is information that had not traveled to me, so if the track season is not going to be happening, then those addendums would not be necessary at this point.
And that's I just want to be clear. Mr. Beard told me that at the intermediate level that they did not have the staffing to have a track season. So my other question is, at our last HR meeting, we approved girls track coaches. So I'm wondering, with those just kind of lie dormant, they were approved but would not be issued. What is the process for that?
So if a season does not come into fruition, those just don't get issued, and then that money is money that we actually save at the end of the year.
And then my next question, which you all may need to follow up on, are we certain that there is a soccer season happening at the intermediate level?
As of when we had to post this last week, yes, all of these were a go, so I will follow up on all 3.
Okay, and then my final question for Exhibit B, I see that we have a mentor listed, and we're about 6 weeks out to the end of the school year. So just out of curiosity, how late in the year would we pair a mentee and a mentor? And then my follow-up question to that is, will the mentee continue to work with the same mentor in the fall, since it's for such a brief period this school year?
Yes, so we will look to provide if we can find mentors and mentees and pair them up, we will do that as late as need be. In this case, the mentor is mentoring a special education teacher, and that as long as that teacher is remaining in that role, we would continue on to follow our program.
So just a question of you, Dr. Kieser, would you be more comfortable with us approving the recommendations for the coaches, knowing that if the season has been canceled, that those would lie dormant, or is your recommendation that we hold on that?
I I would say let me follow up and bring all of them back if they are definitely going at one of the schools. I would rather us have that knowledge instead of just approving it, even though we know that if the season isn't going to happen, they would lie dormant. I would rather us follow up on that. If you're okay with that.
Yeah, it's perfectly fine. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Great questions. Anybody else have any questions for Exhibit B? All right, hearing none, would anybody like to make a recommendation for action at this time for Exhibit A and or B?
I move approval of Exhibit A minus the sub-school counselor district level position until we can get some more clarity around that role. And I also move approval of Exhibit B minus the coaching positions, again, until we can get clarity if those are necessary.
Okay, if we have a motion, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by A. Levy, second by Board Member Schneider. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion passes unanimously. Does anybody else have any thoughts on Exhibits A or B before we proceed? All right, so that then concludes item 2, employment recommendations. We can't, we can't do that because we're not enclosed, right? So we're jumping down then to item 3A, which is the next meeting date. So the next Human Resources Committee, which is a committee of the full board, will meet Tuesday, May 3rd at 6:30 p.m. Any further discussion before we adjourn? Hearing none, anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Well, we're going to give that to Board Member Semrau. Anybody want a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Semrau, second by Ruff. Any other discussion? Okay, it is 7:17. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we are adjourned. Would anybody like a recess, or should we just keep going 5 minutes? Okay, we're going to recess for 5 minutes, and then we'll commence with the regular board meeting. Thanks, folks. right, is everybody just about ready to roll? Okay. All right, it is 7:24, and at this time, I'd like to call our regular meeting to order. Before we begin, the Board of Education would like to let our families and viewers know that our regular board meetings are being simultaneously interpreted. You can watch the Spanish interpreted meeting through the link found at the board website under the Watch Meetings tab with tonight's date. In order to accommodate this interpretation, we will be monitoring the pace of our meeting to allow time for the interpretation, and I would like to remind our board members and others speaking to please speak one at a time. Thank you so much for your consideration and understanding. With that said, may we please get a roll call for attendance, please, Ms. Shope?
Anderson is unavailable. Amy Levy,
Here.
Sean Levy,
Present.
Miller,
Present?
Ruff,
Present.
Semrau,
Present.
Schneider.
Present.
All members are present except Anderson.
Thank you very much. At this time, that takes us to the approval of the agenda. And before I request an approval of the agenda, I'll just note that the swearing in should be at the appropriate time, but if for some reason all members and elect members are not available, I just sort of request the flexibility to kick it a few agenda items down. So I just want to throw that out ahead of time. Given that context, would anybody like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have motion by Schneider, second by Semrau. Any discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that takes us to the Pledge of Allegiance. Board Member Ruff, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight by leaving your mic on so folks at home can hear you? Thanks.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. That takes us to item 2A, public comment. Is there anybody in attendance this evening wishing to make a comment? All right, has anybody written in with a comment? All right, that concludes item 2A for public comment. That takes us then to 3A, our student board member report. Ms. Gonzalez, whenever you're ready. Thank you for being here tonight.
Of course. Good evening, everyone. Tonight, I'm just giving a quick summary of everything going on at Bullitt Memorial for the student report. And the spring sports season is in full swing, and we have a few home games this week if you want to go support. And as some may know, the jazz band has been selected to participate at Essentially Ellington in New York, which is very exciting for a school. And there is a benefit concert being held at the Clip Center at 4 p.m. on April 24th. And tickets are on sale for $10 through April 23rd and $15 on the day of the concert if you would like to attend. As of now, juniors and seniors are preparing for prom on May 7th, and it's exciting to be able to get that experience after years of not being able to have a proper prom. And just like prom is fastly approaching, so is the end of the school year, and a lot of us seniors have gotten accepted to colleges and universities, received scholarships, and are making post-graduation plans. And yeah, that's very exciting, and it's also very rewarding to see how far we have come as a class and how much we have accomplished. And we've also accomplished a lot as a school, especially this term. Thankfully, the fights and threats have died down a bit, so hopefully the last few weeks will run smoothly. But yeah, mostly we're just excited for the remainder of the term and for some our last year. Thank you.
Thank you, and we're so excited for all the things you've got coming up. Thanks for sharing with us. Oh, please, go ahead.
Thank you so much for your report. I had the concert down as 6 p.m., so thank you for correcting that for me. Definitely appreciate that. Where can we purchase tickets? Do you know?
I think it's online.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
So for those viewers at home or others in the community, where can people find information for all of this?
It's on our Community Hub page.
On our Community Hub page,
Under our Family Resources area.
which is right under our Family Resources area.
SDB Family Center.
SDB Family Center. Phenomenal.
The flyers there, and it also has been in Dr. Keyser's newsletter and will be again this week. But to board, I'll send that.
Perfect. So for those watching at home, it's under Community Hub, under Family Resources on the website. It's also been included in Dr. Keyser's Sunday newsletter and will be included in this Sundays as well.
And on our Facebook page, it's already been up a couple.
Amazing. And it's on our Facebook page. Cool. Thank you so much. Great, great, great. So, well, thank you so much, and we really appreciate your report and your time and your leadership. All right, that takes us to Dr. Keyser's board report. Go ahead, please, Dr. Keyser.
Thank you, Board President Miller. So in this second half of April, as we continue to do our work, a lot of conversations happening. Looking forward to having Rob from School Perceptions work with the board again on the community survey and having that process move forward. I've had some meetings with Baird Financial as well as our Tricor for our insurance and benefits provider, and so we are starting to get better clarity in terms of opportunities and efficiencies within our systems. Again, we are looking at our buckets, working within the green and yellow, so short and moderate term, looking at reduction of allocations for next year in the amount of about $1 million, looking at and working through our business committees at cost of living adjustments, so making an adjustment there that would reduce the amount of deficit increase and limiting that to about $1 to $1.5 million. And that will come in May to the committee and then potentially to the full board. And we are continuing to work through our staffing process, which I'll talk a little bit more about in a couple of slides. In working with Baird has been adjusting our forecasting tools, and we're not quite ready to do a full presentation to the full board to update these numbers. So we are sticking with our benchmarks here. So we've started with these numbers. We're going to stick with these numbers as long as we possibly can. But I wanted to let you know that as Baird is looking through their forecasting tool, as we start to put more and more pieces into that tool, including our cost of living, which is a potential big rock next month. They're looking at multiple scenarios and impact and how that will impact those numbers. Also recently in our community, we had 2 tax incremental districts, or TIDs, that closed. It happened, the numbers won't mean much to those who aren't following this, but we had our largest TID, TID 10, close, and TID 12, which was a much smaller one, relatively speaking. Right now, it's unknown exactly the financial impact on our budget. We do know that it's a double-edged sword in that if there are residual funds in there, that will come to us in revenue. That may come this year or next year, depending on when all of the paperwork gets done. But it also has an impact on our equalization aid, which then helps set our mill rate and levy, because that's what gets reported to the state and it goes into that calculation. So once we have that piece, as well as some of the pieces around cost of living, we'll be able to put those into the forecasting tool, and then we'll invite Lisa and Wendy back to do an updated presentation. And at that point, these numbers will change. While we're on this slide, well, actually, I moved it over onto this slide. As far as the cost of living, that second big rock, we approved this year as part of our budget approval process, a increase of a flat $12.50 per teacher and a 2% increase for all other employee groups. This was in conversation with the BEA 3 years ago, in which they were meeting and discussed, let's stabilize our budget for the next 3 years from a teacher standpoint, and let's review this as compared to the CPI and see where we fall out. As it turns out, this is the third year. My proposal is to go into next year with the exact same cost of living increase. That at least will stabilize what our budget increases would be. It would still be a moderate size increase to all employees as opposed to a salary freeze across the board. And what it has as in the immediate term, that 10.5 would actually grow to an 11.7 as opposed to what currently CPI is at, which is 4.7, which is roughly about $2.5 million across the board. So that is not a direct savings, such as not paying out a stipend because a season isn't moving forward, but it is a savings in the sense that it is mitigating how much that budget deficit would increase from one year to the next. As we look at benefits, I'm again met with Tricor, and they are our third party that actually goes out and helps us get our health insurance third party provider as well as our prescription providers. And so far, in looking just at the prescriptions, we have 2 programs with FlexScripts, and these 2 programs at this point are saving, one program is saving about $85,000 just this year alone in cost savings as compared to if we weren't with this program and didn't have those cost savings in there. And then the second one, which is relatively new, it's only a couple of months old, has saved about $14,000. These particular programs, how this is being saved is that the providers are actually working with our benefits coordinator and actually reaching directly out to our employees. However, that doesn't lessen the effect that if any employees want to know or see if there are any particular programs that will help them save on prescription or health insurance costs, all you have to do is call Cindy McKillips. She is more than willing and handles many phone calls and emails for people who are just looking for ways that they can save on out-of-pocket costs. But both of these programs with FlexScripts, they monitor our benefits, and they will actually reach out and say if they can save money, they will contact the individual employees directly. And sometimes that causes them to call Cindy McKellips and say, is this a scam? And she's like, no, this will actually save you money. We have asked Tricor to not only go with our current providers, but also to do some modeling. And just so that the board knows, when I talk about modeling, I'm not just talking about modeling what is the cost and potential savings short term, but really what is that long-term savings. So we all know that if we want to switch from vendor A to vendor B, they're always going to offer you a great deal for switching. But those deals rarely last for longer than a year or two. So when we talk about modeling, we're always looking at a 3 to 5 year model because we have to get past those initial incentives and say, what is the long-term year-to-year cost if we were to stick with a provider 3, 4, 5 years. Our goal is to have our benefits and because we're self-insured, be fund neutral so that we're not having to kick additional funds into our self-insured funding. And we've been able to actually do that in a couple of situations. We're getting close simply because now that we're coming out of the pandemic, there are more people going to the hospitals, and so claims are going up a little bit. But Tricor is, at this point, in their 2-year contract with us is helping to do that modeling. So as we get more information, I'll report it out at this level. Staffing, where we currently are, is all the way at the bottom. We, this week, started to move our postings externally. We've had the last 2 weeks where any individuals who are displaced have been able to apply internally, as well as any employee who is wanting a new opportunity could apply internally to any of the open positions that we have. Now that we've had that opportunity, principals are having conversations. We are now opening those postings externally. So we are still able to have individuals post internally, which is a different form than if they were posting externally, simply because we know a lot more about them. So we are working through that process, and hopefully our goal is that we find places for all of the people potentially displaced. We started off with 41 open positions in all of our schools and programs, and right now intermediate is the one that has the most open positions. And then later tonight, we'll have a little discussion to talk about summer school and answer any questions. We're looking forward to having registration open up tomorrow. We've been working feverishly behind the scenes, updating information, getting information ready. And one of the things that I'll highlight is exactly that registration process, because we took the feedback from last year and made some adjustments. Summer school this year will be 2 3-week sessions at all levels, beginning on June 21st and going through July 29th. We've been working with DPI at the high school level on the hours for credits, so we feel very confident that we can now have all 3 levels on one schedule instead of having different schedules at different levels. And then next week on Monday, we will have our kickoff to our strategic design team at the Beloit Public Library. We've extended a little over 60 invites to community members and district members, splitting it about 50-50. So we have about 30 and 30 on both sides. The goal is that by June 20th, we wrap up so that on June 21st, we can bring forward to the board a draft copy of the strategic plan for discussion, revisions, and then ultimately adoption on or about July 5th. And that's my report for this evening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kieser. Does anybody have any questions, comments? Go ahead, please.
I have a question about the writing process with the strategic plan. Will it work similar to our committee structure? And what I mean by that is, will we get access to the draft as it is being created so we can ask questions and kind of put input, or will the almost final document come to us and then we do all of our questions, et cetera, then?
That's a great question. So working with Colin, it is actually going to come as a whole, simply because the first 2 meetings are going to be a lot of analysis of data, and then in between the second and the third meeting, a subset of that design team is actually going to start doing some drafting of the writing and then get some feedback from that design team. And then that's what's going to come before the board. So it's going to be halfway through the process by the time the board gets to it. And so the board takes it from the midway point of the writing all the way to completion.
And then have those design teams been established? And then specifically, is there diversity of backgrounds, lived experience, expertise on those design teams? Because I know that's going to heavily influence the writing of the document.
Absolutely. So the infographic that's underneath there is taken from Battelle for Kids, and those are the groups in which the design team was created. So we've asked students, educators, families, school leaders, district leaders, policymakers, so that would be like the city, representatives, and so forth, social services, agencies, higher education, business, community leaders, and communities of faith. And what we tried to do is we've tried to solicit recommendations from individuals. So we had a couple of times where I put in the update for the board to give suggestions, and then also reaching out to our community partners and individuals that have worked on like the Academy Master Design Plan, and then some of the other work that we've been doing around the community in partnerships to collect those ideas. And so as people have started to come on board, they have said, oh, this is another person. So I think you, as an example, Board Member Levy, and you made recommendations, and we've extended invites for people to come on there. So we've tried to be as inclusive as we can, and then as diverse as we can, as in many identities as we can identify.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for the question. Anybody else have any thoughts or questions for Dr. Kieser? You sure? Yeah. Okay. All right. Sounds good. No, that's fine. Thank you so much for your presentation. We appreciate it. All right. That then takes us to, let's see, where are we here? The committee and other board reports. Would anybody like to give a report for business operations and finance this evening? Nope. Okay, so we're going to skip 4. That's fine. We're going to skip 4A, go on to 4B. Is there a report tonight for teaching, learning, equity, and pupil services?
Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee met this evening. We received information about coordinated comprehension, early intervening services, Even Start Family Literacy Program, Teaching, Learning, and Equity, Bilingual Programs update, and BH 365, a Black History curriculum resource for our social studies adoption. We did, in committee, move discussion of summer school 2022 to the full board. I believe it's in the consent agenda.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Vice President Levy? Okay, that takes us to Governance Committee. I'll just say that we are in the process of considering a timeline switch for evaluation and the model that we're using for evaluation of the superintendent. I think that's really the big burning topic that's going on right now, so really nothing else to report there. Would you like to go ahead, Board Member Levy?
Sure. My legislative update is attached. There's nothing new in committee, but remember that last month, lots of new things came to committee, both on the Assembly and the State Senate side for the Education Committee. So please do review that when you have a chance. Policy updates. So I just want to recap those policies that are listed under the consent agenda for a first reading. Policy 163, board member development opportunities. There were minor language changes. Please note, listed in that policy, a calendar of school board conferences, conventions, and workshops shall be maintained by the board vice president and the superintendent of schools. So as we're reviewing policy, when we find things in policy that we are obligated to do, we just want to make sure that we highlight those. Policy 163, Rule 1, guidelines for board member development opportunities. There were just formatting changes and adjustments to streamline the language and remove redundancies. Policy 166, board member request for information. We did add a clarification. There's a statement in that policy that says the board member requesting information is therefore responsible for submitting a request according to approved procedure. And so we inserted, for clarification, found in Policy 166, Rule 1. In Policy 166, Rule 1, procedures for board members' requests for information. Again, formatting changes, adjustments to streamline the language to make sure that that process was easy to read and understand. Policy 174, organizational meeting. Just wanted to bring to everyone's attention that the organizational meeting needs to happen within 30 days of seating incoming board members, which we are well in that range. And also that parliamentarian has been added to the slate of elected board officials or board officers. So we move to policy 174, Rule 1, Board Organizational Meeting Procedures. This is one that I'm actually recommending that we pull and adjust. There is a clause in there that says it says before the organizational meeting, board members will have 3 minutes to present information. So if you would like to run for an office, the way that it's written, it says that before the meeting, you would kind of give your pitch. I am recommending that we change that to during the organizational meeting. Just to note, which we have followed, the declaration of interest forms need to be sent out the Friday after Election Day. So that has happened, and new and returning board members have a week to complete that. So hopefully everyone has done that. Again, the recommendation that we pull and make that minor adjustment of during the organizational meeting. And then discussion is encouraged after anyone who is vying for an office has their 3 minutes to state their case. Final policy under consent for this evening is policy 183, voting method. The policy explains how items are posted and categorized on board docs. So this would be great for our new board members. There are 3 categories: report to the board, which is traditionally known as information only, an action item, and a consent item. Just to highlight, each board member does have the prerogative to give a report or to make a presentation on any matter of interest of the board that's listed on the agenda. Also to note, board members may be considered present and participating members during meetings through electronic communication. So that's something that's unique to our board that other municipalities have omitted. So I just wanted to highlight that. And then the final point to note is when any question is put to the board for a vote, it shall be by a voice vote unless a roll call vote is requested by a board member or when required by state statute. And then every member has the obligation to vote except where the member has a conflict of interest. Such conflict of interest shall be announced by the member, and the member shall be permitted to abstain. Now, the reason I bring that up is in the recent past, we have had board members decline to vote because they weren't clear on what we were voting on, and that is not a reason to abstain. So I just wanted to highlight that. And that concludes the policy update.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Does anybody have any questions for Chair Levy? All right, hearing none, we will go to item 5, which is swearing in and recognitions. So at this time, we're going to swear in our elected board members. My page isn't loading, so I'm assuming that goes to Ms. Shope? Nope. Oh, Ms. Levy. Yeah. Okay, let's do it. For the people at home, do we need to keep do we want to maybe do it by the microphone, perhaps?
Thank you, Dan.
Oh, there we got it. Okay, perfect. Sorry about that. Thanks.
Let's stand so we can be visible.
All right.
Is that camera on?
Yeah, all of these are. Yeah. They've got the ceremony pointing to you.
There you go. You're right on there.
Brett? We're good? All right, excellent. We are on. Okay. I, Brian Anderson.
I, Brian Anderson.
Okay, please raise your hand there. Having been elected to the office of school board member.
Having been elected to the office of school board member.
But not yet have entered upon the duties thereof.
But not yet have entered upon the duties thereof.
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I would uphold the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge
and will faithfully discharge
the duties of said office
the duties of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. And I have paperwork when we're done. Yeah, we'll do this right after. All right, Mr. Winfield, would you like to come up? All right. I, Jawan Winfield,
I, Juwan Winfield,
having been elected to the office of school board member,
having been elected to office of school board member,
but have not yet entered upon the duties thereof.
but have not entered the duties upon,
Will repeat.
Okay.
But have not yet entered
but have not yet entered
upon the duties thereof.
upon the duties thereof.
Perfect. Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
Swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of said office
of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations, sir. All right. I, Greg Schneider,
I, Greg Schneider,
having been elected to the office of school board member,
having been elected to the office of school board member,
but have not yet entered
but have not yet entered
upon the duties thereof,
upon the duties thereof,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of said office
of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations,
Thank you.
sir. I, Megan Miller,
I, Megan Miller,
having been elected to the office of school board member,
having been elected to the office of school board member,
but have not yet entered
but have not yet entered
upon the duties thereof,
upon the duties thereof,
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and the Constitution of the State of Wisconsin,
and will faithfully discharge the duties
and will faithfully discharge the duties
of said office
of said office
to the best of my ability.
to the best of my ability.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right.
Can I get one picture of the four of you? Sure. That'd be okay. Right here's fine. That's good. We have the flag in the background. That would be very nice. Thank you all very much. 1, 2, 3, one more. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky.
Congratulations.
We got to sign it.
Yes. Ms. Miller, that one's not yours.
Yes, ma'am.
There you go. Yes. And then these need to go back to Ms. Schultz.
Appreciate it. We don't have to date it, huh?
Oh, it's already on there.
It's already on there.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. I feel so bad. Just for the record.
At this time, I'd like to invite our newly elected board members, Brian Anderson and Joanne Winfield. Oh, well, no, I was actually gonna, if that's okay, sorry. I just wanted to take a moment and acknowledge and recognize and welcome you to our board. I know you've already been able to join us, but this is a really important day. We're really excited to have you sworn in, and we're proud to have you serve as part of our board. And we'd just like to congratulate you again. Do we all want to like clap or something cool? And I know that each of you will serve with the foremost interests of our students at heart, and we're glad to have you on board. Thank you. And thank you for your willingness to serve. At this time, if we could please recognize, and I guess Greg, same for you. You're already kind of old hat, though. We welcomed you. We're so excited to welcome you again. Sorry for the lack of fanfare. Cool. All right, board. Well, whatever. I'm not important. Okay, so if we could just please ask, if we could ask board members Ruff and Ms. Merrell, do you wanna stand up so we can embarrass you a little bit, please? Well, could you just do it anyway? Cool. Why don't you just come around? We have some purple things for you here, but I just jotted down some notes. I just want to say that each of you have served. You came in at a time when you were desperately needed. That was a sink or swim situation for our board. And not only did we swim, I mean, we made it across the channel. I am so proud to have had the opportunity to serve with both of you. You have brought and strengthened the integrity, pride, and just focus on our students. You've both served with courage and conviction and dedication that has made me even prouder to be a member of this board in this district, and what you have contributed to strengthening the journey that we've undergone for consistency and professionalism and just outstanding performance is unquantifiable. And on behalf of the board, from the bottom of my heart, I'd like to thank you both for everything you've given to this board, and just thank you for your service. So let's all clap.
Board President Miller, may I? May I? All right, so I will be brief. Board Member Ruff, it has just been a joy to serve with you. We share the same name, Joyce. I appreciate your calm and your wisdom and your steadiness. Board Member Merrell, you are just a wild card in the best way. I appreciate your energy, your honesty, and the moment in closed session when I fell in love with you. You know exactly when that was. So thank you both for sharing of your time and your talents. I really appreciate both of you, and thank you for your service.
So we're just going to keep moving down. To both of you, I would like to say thank you. The service that you rendered, one, to put yourself in front of the community for a public interview, and then also to serve in the manner that you served. Having just come off this election, I think that people can understand when you are trying to serve your community, the way that individually you can be personally attacked. And there are moments when we step up to serve our community where you become the focus, and your intention is not that you are the focus, but that the focus is on the children. You all have both endured newspaper articles, slanderous Facebook posts, and other things like that. But you've served with dignity. You have helped us as a board achieve things that we had not achieved. And it's a testament to the integrity and the strength of character that you both possess. And you have made us better, and we thank you for your service.
Okay. also want to say to both of you that it's been a pleasure being with you on the board. Great, normally I'm sitting between them, which is good, that I get attacked from both sides. But questions, but it's been just a pleasure serving with you, and I appreciate your energy, your effort, your focus to help bring the board together. So thank you.
And allow me to add, bringing it back to where Board President Miller had started, you stepped up and served at a time of need, and with humility and with tenacity, you've been a member of this board who has helped bring some a new life to in a new direction in which we are building off of collective board commitments, which your voices will be a part of moving forward. That can't be taken away. And then contributing your voice and your chorus to the song that we are creating in moving our district in the direction that we want it to go. So don't be strangers. You'll be tapped to lend your voices in other areas, and it's been an honor to work alongside you during this time.
Thank y'all. You give me the vapors. I appreciate you all.
All right. Big feelings. Okay, so that takes us then, I believe, right, to item 6, action and discussion items. If we could give the floor to Ms. Elliott for discussion. Nope. Am I in the wrong spot?
Nope, you're in the right spot. It's just me.
You go right ahead, Dr. Keyser, and talk to us about summer school.
Absolutely. So I appreciate the opportunity for the committee to move this for discussion to the full board. The 2022 summer school is, and I will run, this has been available through the committee, but for the community at large, I'm going to share this. Our summer school 2022 reboot is taking its lessons from last year. We've made some tweaks and changes to bring some alignment. The biggest thing in terms of our goals and our aspirations is to, again, provide quality programming, provide those opportunities for face-to-face learning, and build those bridges to address credit recovery as well as build proficiency both in literacy and mathematics. We are, again, still doing 2 sites, one east, one west for elementary and intermediate, and then at the high school where BLA will be a part of that. The biggest thing is that we are now all moving to the same schedule. So as I've been sharing all along, it's going to be 2 3-week sessions. Like last year, we are continuing with our different pathways. So our academic pathway is working in core areas of literacy, biliteracy, and mathematics, while our wellness and enrichment is built around student choice and high interests. And then our bridges, again, looking at foundational skills at our earliest grade levels, building upon reading fluency at our upper elementary and intermediate, and then working into our algebra, building into and expanding from Algebra 1 and the successes there. And that feedback, we've now increased it to Algebra 2 as well as English 9. And then as our asynchronous credit recovery learning at the high school level, which has allowed us to make that adjustment to the schedule at the high school level. And we still will have our summer school graduation ceremony. As we look at our elementary and intermediate times, again, those sessions starting on June 21st and going through July 8th. Then second session, the 11th through the 29th. we are going to have a 7:45 start with breakfast, going to 9:45, and then moving into that wellness and enrichment at 9:45 to 12:15. Again, the opportunities for us to focus on reading. And at the intermediate, we're going to start a little bit later at 8:30. Again, breakfast being provided and lunch being provided as part of part 2, 8:30 to 10:30 and 10:30 to 1 o'clock. We will have our registration open up tomorrow, and the biggest thing here in the feedback was the double registration, which we have thankfully, through a lot of sweat equity and going into the system, have figured out a way that families only have to register once. So when families register, they will register all at once. They will not have to do this registration and then wait for an email and go back in and select courses. It will be one and done. So that was a lot of feedback in moving to the online system. Again, if families have questions, we have all of our information updated on websites. So if there are questions, they can go to that to get phone numbers of who they can call and reach out to. We will have our breakfast with our mid-morning session with lunch. And then our transportation is still going to be provided. We will have some corner stops so that we can make sure that our transportation is hitting all of our times. And then again, we're still working with our providers to have those extended childcare opportunities. At the high school, again, we're going to be having that same time frame. Those bridges that we talked about, we had a lot of feedback on the Algebra 1 bridge, so much so that we are now building a bridge to Algebra 2. Same team that built the first one is coming back for a reboot and a sequel, so that we can elevate those students going into that Algebra 2. And tracking the numbers, we had some really good success from that. And then with our end of the summer, having that end of July, early August graduation ceremony. Again, we're following all the updated guidelines and expectations. We are putting our handbooks that we are using in the school year. They apply during our summer programming. And then as far as the materials and resources, we have not made changes in terms of that. We are still using our Lit Camp. We're using our reading fluency packs the same as last year, our same manipulatives and high interest chapter books, and then credit recovery resources. Again, as families have questions or just want to check things out, they can reach out to the district, and we can direct them to the right places. But we also can go and send information through our Skyward system, and we'll get information out to the appropriate principals and teachers that way as well. One thing on the staffing side, we have had people who are not currently administrators express interest in being summer school administrators. So what we're pairing them with is a person who doesn't have, in some cases, that administrative experience with an experienced administrator, so that we will actually have administrative teams, so that we will have less turnover and need of substitutes. But we still have a cadre of individuals who are willing to step up and sub. And if anyone wants to be a summer school teacher or para or sub, please reach out to the district. We're always looking for individuals to work in our buildings. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. It's an excellent presentation. Does anybody have any questions? Go ahead.
I have a couple. Thank you for providing this detailed plan. I appreciate it. Under the programming highlights for equitable opportunity bridges, are there opportunities for grades 6 through 8?
Yes, we did not change the programming structure from last year to this year. So Yes, I believe there is, but I don't recall the details of them right off the top of my head.
Okay.
But we can provide that.
Thank you for that. And then what are the two sites for elementary and intermediate?
That's a great question. So we are doing help me on that as I'm looking. We're doing Converse and Todd, and then we're doing Cunningham and Fruzen, and then the high school. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Those are great questions. Anybody else have any thoughts, questions?
I almost had the wrong one on the west side.
Oh, that's okay. Everybody's good? Well, I look forward to signing my children up tomorrow for summer school. All three of them, yay. And any other comments? We just really appreciate you and your team's work on this. Thank you so much.
No, this has been really a group effort, and while I'm presenting this, there is about 40 people that should be standing behind me taking a lot of the credit because they're the ones doing the day-to-day work. So I appreciate all of the work that the team's done to get to this point.
Oh, that's great. The team's done an excellent job, so thank you. Anything else before we move on? All right, that takes us then to item 6B, the School Perceptions Community Survey. And I'm going to invite Mr. Demuse, I believe, is on the line to get us up to speed here. Thanks, Mr. Demuse.
Absolutely. So Rob's back here. We have not had any additions or suggestions in terms of requests, so I will kick it over to Rob. And so if it looks very familiar to you, that's because it is. And our goal is approval tonight so that we can stay true to the timeline that Rob will be kicking us off in reviewing. Thank you, Rob.
I have new earbuds. Can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Okay,
we
good.
can.
Good to know. They're wireless, which I never know if it's going to work or not. So let me bring you over to your timeline because that's always where I like to begin. Give that a chance to come up. So we are here on April 19th for board approval of the survey, and then things will move quite quick. So the first thing that I'd like to do is get it to an outside proofer. So we go through this ourselves, but the proofer always finds something without a doubt. So I will send it off to him, and then that'll culminate in sending this off to the printer on the 22nd is Friday. So that'll happen quite quick. We'll stay in touch with the printer then. So we've been told, and I mentioned this to Dan, that we conservatively should estimate about 3 weeks between when they get a file and when it'll land in mailboxes. Now, sometimes it is a little bit quicker, but apparently envelopes in the 60-pound paper you can add to your supply chain issues lists. Things that I learned in my career apparently is the supply chain issues of envelopes, but that's what they run into. So that's what they're dealing with, and that's why it's sometimes delayed up to 3 weeks between when they get a file and when it lands in mailboxes. So we'll have a landing date of about May 11th. Your staff will have the opportunity to fill it out about a week beforehand. On May 4th, we have that set to go out. An email will go out to parents about the same time as it lands in mailboxes. We'll have a deadline then right before Memorial Day so that I can be back. We have time to look at your reports and look at your data and produce something in order to be back with you on June 28th. So assuming board approval happens tonight, things will move quite quickly. So before I go into the actual survey and review that with you, any questions about the timeline or how this might look?
Doesn't look like we have any questions. Thank you.
Okay. And then the part that's a little drafty, I haven't looked at this in quite some time, but just so you kind of know then how things would come back together, we would give you time to digest some of that data that you get in your survey. And then we'd regroup probably in very late summer to talk about what kind of projects you potentially would want to test on a operational or capital referendum, should this round of the survey sign the permission slip for you to do that. So if you do get permission from your community to move forward with some planning, we would pick that up again in about August. So let's go over to the actual survey itself then. Again, there really aren't any changes actually. So what I want to do with you is just review what data we'll get back to you in June. One thing for you, Dan, there's a very logistical things here that if you could take a look at, just some phone numbers and things, but that is not urgent at all. But just a reminder what data you'll get here. You'll be able to slice and dice your data based on various demographic features such as age or where somebody lives, whether they're a parent or staff or neither of those. Some overall satisfaction questions, and these are the ones that are benchmarked and compared to other districts so that we can give you some comparisons. And the 0 to 10 question, how likely somebody would be to recommend the district. We have a feedback section, which we will break apart for you in terms of staff, parents, and non-parents, non-staff. These are kind of the general questions that, again, we felt like everybody would have the opportunity to have some know-how in. Where people want you to focus your planning and resources, so everything from student discipline to math achievement to technology access. Some advice for the superintendent. And then the two biggest parts of the survey that will lead into August is to what extent are people okay with you supporting or exploring rather an operational referendum, and to what extent are they okay with you exploring a capital referendum. Some questions that are specific for families and staff, since these are a little bit more difficult for the average community member to answer. It does take a little bit of tighter connection with the school in order to answer some of these, but we'll provide you some of those. And then there's our mailer. So we'll be able to provide you a lot of data coming back in June. And one thing that we'll do just to make your life a little bit easier, so say for instance on some of these questions about feedback, one thing that we'll be able to do that is quite helpful is, at the end of the day, what are the 5 areas that your parents, your staff, and your non-parents, non-staff are most agreeing with? What are the bottom 5 areas for each? So that you can kind of see, where are our groups agreeing and where are they disagreeing? Are they all agreeing that we have the support of the community? Are all of them disagreeing, or are there some disagreements among different groups on some of these items? So we'll do all that work for you on the back end, so you can see how various subgroups are feeling about the district. So all in all, I'm confident there are probably some grammatical issues somewhere in here, but overall, I think you got a good survey. This is not our first time we've done one of these. In fact, I just presented some results earlier today for the Drummond Area School District up north, and they had some good data coming out of it. So again, I don't have too many smart things to add other than I want to open it up and see if you have any questions or any feedback that I can help you out with.
Thank you for the presentation. We do have a question. Go ahead, please.
So I noticed that this survey is scheduled to go to the printer on the 22nd, and we have our organizational meeting on the 26th. So titles may be changing, board members will be changing at the bottom. Is there wiggle room there? I just want to make sure that the survey we're sending out is current.
Yes. Otherwise, what I'm thinking is just to verbalize my thoughts. So yes, there's a little wiggle room. Otherwise, and this happens every 2 years at this time of year, is we wouldn't necessarily have to name names. We can also just sign it from district administration and the school district of Beloit Board of Education without naming specific names, but the groups would be there.
I actually love that it has our names. If we could just remove titles, then we would have that information now, but I'd like to hear how other board members feel.
That's a good option.
Do any board members have an objection to it just listing like your name and then board member? There's no objections to that here, so if that's okay with you, Ms. Levy, we can just say like board member or something.
Yeah, or even if we had a header of current board members and then it just listed our names, I think would be great.
Sure.
Perfect.
Yeah, can I get your help with that? I'll send you a draft of this, and if you could just, because what I'm hearing is you'd want the new names on here, right? The people that you just swore in a few minutes ago?
Yes.
Okay. Dan, if you could help me out with that, just on the I'll highlight them, and I'll send this to you the first thing tomorrow morning, and I can use your help then with spellings and order and things like that.
We'll do that, and then I also have the numbers so I can fill that in at the same time.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Thank you. Great question, observation. Other thoughts, questions, or feedback? Go ahead, please.
Just a different question. So in the demographic breakdown, I know this is not requested or added, but I thought about this with the disaggregation and how we did. Is there a reason we did not identify race? Or just in your experiences, what have other districts done?
They haven't. And it actually stems from a comment we received a couple of years ago. And it actually came up both in terms of asking a socioeconomic related question and a race question. And we had very similar, and there were two different surveys, and they were in two different communities. So I know that they were two different people. But we've seen multiple times, are you gonna listen to me even though I don't have as much money? Or even heartbreaking, we had somebody say, I'm a person of color. Are you still going to listen to me because I don't feel heard otherwise? And having people fill that out triggered some of those responses. Now, that being said, we've done it before. And in fact, Stoughton, which we just finished up today, does ask it. So it's not part of the standard, but it certainly doesn't mean that we can't include it. I am very open to doing that.
Do you have a preference, Vice President Levy?
No. No. For this survey, not specifically, but the information for me, as we make this huge pass at data gathering, is that I do think that there will be some differences in our subgroups and our responses. But since the primary purpose of this is just about our support for the for operational referendum, I'm fine at this time not, because that's a different task for a different day.
Does any board member have a different thought, or are we all in consensus with Vice President Levy?
Well, I have a question. Rob, what has been your experience if you make it optional? Because I completely understand if people don't want to give that information if they feel that their feedback will be perceived a certain way. One, if you make it optional, and maybe you haven't run into this, do you have the same issues? And if it's optional, do people fill it out?
Really good questions. So actually, every question in here will be optional, with the exception of primary residence, and whether somebody's a staff, and whether somebody is a parent or caregiver of a current child in the school district. And those are our three big groups for us to disaggregate on. So those are actually the only questions that we make required. We never make anything else required. And in fact, even what we do, even though it's not going to be and it won't stop anybody, we still provide the option of I prefer not to respond or choose not to answer or something to that flavor in effect. So yes, we can absolutely do both of what you said.
Will we have, if we don't include race ethnicity in this survey, will we have an opportunity to gather that data through another process? Because I think it could be helpful, especially when we talk about how our district is perceived or how people feel that their input is valued, et cetera. If we have any certain community that is feeling strongly, I think that that's helpful information for the board and the administration to know so we can address it.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, I think out of the two surveys that you'll do, so in other words, there's this one that's kind of the planning one, and then the next one that's more of the potential financial support should your community give you the go-ahead. I would say that of the two, if you were going to do it, this one would arguably be the even more important one, because this will ask questions like everything from, do I feel like my child is being disciplined in a way that's fair and consistent, to district heading in the right direction. And there very well could be different perceptions of that based on the racial identity of a person. So I can, it hasn't been in, but I certainly can. I have no qualms about putting it in if that's data that you'd like. And this is certainly the time to do it, because any questions you can't ask, you won't be able to go back and slice and dice later on. So
then I would push for us to include that in this version of the survey.
Sure.
Does anybody have, go ahead. Oh,
I agree. I think we should include it.
thank you so much. Board Member Schneider, thank you very much. Board Member Levy, does anybody else have a different opinion, or are we all in consensus?
Sounds like a good idea.
Sounds great. Mr. Demuse, that works for you, sir?
It does. And I was thinking real estate wise, I may ditch this one then. I found that it's the one that people disaggregate on the least. And I think that this question, if you were to ask it, maybe more important than the next one anyhow, next one being a potential referendum support. So I'm just thinking in terms of space here. I think I'll probably replace a race or ethnicity question and take this one out. Is that okay?
Does anybody have any objections to that? Looks like we are all on the same page with you.
Okay. I'll make it happen.
Perfect. Thanks so much for your flexibility and for discussing that with us. Any other thoughts, questions? Mr. Demuse, just want to thank you so much for your work and your time on this. We're really excited to see this continue forward.
Yeah, you bet. And by the way, thanks everybody for filling out their board development tool. That report will be coming up next, so I might see you again in a couple of weeks for that one.
Well, we look forward to it. That sounds great. Dr. Kieser, did you have any thoughts before we go on?
Rob just took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say, Rob's not going far because he's been working on the longitudinal data for the board self-assessment. So thank you, Rob. You and I will connect on this and then look forward to bringing you back on for the board self-assessment.
You bet. I'll be ready to go.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you so much, Dr. Kieser, for all your work that you've done on this as well.
Take care. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. All right, that concludes section 6, taking us to our consent agenda. Would anybody like anything removed from the consent agenda at this time?
I would like to remove policy 174, rule 1 from the consent agenda, please.
Perfect, thank you. So noted. Anything else? Hearing none, is there anybody who'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda without item 7F or policy 174, rule 1?
So moved.
We have a motion by Levy, second by Ruff. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Board Member Levy, did you want to speak to policy 174, rule 1?
Yeah, just a minor change. Under B, it says prior to the organizational meeting, interested parties will be able to present information and qualifications, as well as the rationale for wanting to become or stay a board officer. There's really no opportunity for us to do those presentations prior to. So if we could change that to during the organizational meeting.
Are there any objections to that? Sounds good. Would anybody like to make a motion to pass policy 174, rule 1 as amended
So moved.
for first reading? Sorry, was that Board Member Semrau? Okay, so Board Member Semrau has made a motion to pass policy 174, rule 1 as amended for first reading. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by A. Levy. Any discussion? Hearing none, all of those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? All right, motion passes unanimously, which takes us then to item 8, our meeting closing. So, item 8A, future board meeting dates. Please tune in Tuesday, April 26th at 6 p.m. for our organizational meeting. And that will be then followed by our governance committee meeting, which will be Tuesday, April 26th also, then at 7 p.m. Business Operations and Finance Committee meets Tuesday, May 3rd at 5:30 p.m. Human Resources Committee, which is a committee of the full board, meets Tuesday, May 3rd at 6:30 p.m., followed by our regular board meeting, which then meets Tuesday, May 3rd at 7 p.m. Our Policy Committee meeting will meet Wednesday, May the 4th be with you at 5:30 p.m., followed by, sorry, I couldn't help it, followed by our Teaching, Learning, Equity, and Pupil Services Committee meeting Tuesday, May 17th at 5:30 p.m. Human Resources Committee, which is a committee of the full board, meets Tuesday, May 17th at 6:30 p.m., followed by our regular board meeting Tuesday, May 17th at 7 p.m. In case anybody isn't aware, the organizational meeting next week is where new board members will be seated and new elections will occur, in case anybody is interested in tuning in for that or attending. All right, anything else before we move to adjourn? I would just like to take a moment again to thank all of our let me say this correctly, incoming board members. I'd like to especially thank Board Member Schneider, who falls like right between the cracks of you've been here, but you're new, and I'm so proud of you for the election you ran in, for the fact that you get to join us for the next several years. It's very exciting. And I think it's been a great meeting. So thanks, everybody. Anything else for the good of the group? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, okay. All right, it is 8:34. All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 All right, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody, so much. Have a great evening.